All right, hello, and welcome back to another jam-packed, fun-filled, excitement-packed. I used packed twice, I guess. Anyway, it's gonna be a good episode, and I've got my friend and yours, Mark Shropshire here. He is a master instructor with OS, and that is saying something because there are not a lot of master instructors, and he's got a couple of cool things that he's working on that I was excited to hear about. I'm sure you're going to be excited to hear about. And
Thank you.
we were talking a little bit just before things got started, among other things, about pickleball, and in particular, he's got some interesting insights about that because I know that pickleball is like all the rage now. I've
It
played it;
is.
it's fun. I get it, But we're going to talk about how to do that, maybe not get all messed up, and how one of our mutual friends, somebody I've actually not had on the podcast, we'll mention him momentarily,
Mhm.
is he's actually like an amateur pickleball player, and he's quite good, as I
Yeah,
understand.
he's fairly well skilled.
Yes, yes, he is. Despite his other handicaps,
Well,
we'll
I
make
mean,
fun
he's
of him.
short, so
No, you know what? We're talking about Piers Kwan, my friend
we are.
in
Yeah.
Australia, and he's tall. He's like, it's funny because I've told this to him before. I was like, you know what? To look at you, well, he's not tall relative to you. You're like a Nordic giant. You're like the techno Viking. Do you remember that
Yeah,
guy?
yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen him. Yeah.
yeah. You're techno Viking, uh, but presumably with less MDMA in your system.
A little bit
But
less, yeah.
yeah, but Piers, he's about my height or maybe a little taller. So I mean, I guess he's average height, let's say. But if you look at him, you would think he's short because his uh what are the words I'm looking for? His build is such where he just looks like he would be short because he's got sort of he likes to joke that he can see what's on the top shelf but he can't reach it. So he's got like short arms and short legs. Um, but uh, but he's very good at pickleball, and he's super
Yeah.
strong too. I mean, he can press. I think he can press the beast. He at a minimum. I know he can press to 40, but like
Cool.
easy. But
Yeah.
I think he can press the beast too. He's a very strong guy. So the handicap
Yes.
thing is mostly just making fun of his weird build. But
Yeah.
he's done that before I have, so he beat me to the punch.
Yeah. It's not as good as when they steal your thunder and they take it away already. So it's
It's important. It reminds me. I never saw the show, but I read a like a synopsis at this one point in it from Mike Mahler's book Live Life Aggressively. He
Mhm.
talks about the movie Highlander or the TV
Yeah.
show. Oh, well, hang on a second. There was a TV show and a movie. I think he's talking about the TV show. And in the TV show, if you're a Highlander, the only way you can die is if you get beheaded, and so you can get stabbed and jacked up in any other number of ways, and it's not gonna kill you. It'll hurt, but it won't kill you. And so the Highlander at one point in some episode uses this to his advantage, and somebody, he's in a sword fight, which I understand is kind of like a common occurrence. It's like a car chase in a James Bond movie.
Yeah. It's
Um,
what you do.
yeah, is what you do if you're in Highlander. And so he gets stabbed in the ribs, and he uses that because now the guy's sword is stuck. So he cuts the other dude's head off, and he's victorious. But he's got to take that knife in the ribs. So that's what it's like making fun of yourself, so that somebody else can't do it. Take it out
Yeah.
from under them, take away their ammo, and then wham! If you're really good, you hit them with something, and then they can't come back for it because they weren't prepared. So
Verbally behead them.
correct. Pierce is one step ahead of the game. Before we
Yeah.
go any further, I want to remind my listeners, especially if you're new, you should go get my 9-minute kettlebell and bodyweight challenge because you know what? One of the things Mark and I are going to be talking about is going to be the loaded resets. And what a reset is, if you're not really familiar with original strength, we'll talk about that. But the 9-minute challenge is based around movements that I guarantee you're not practicing and are certain to help your strength. I've had a lot of people reach out, say their press got stronger, their squats got easier. One guy said that your 9-minute challenge has equaled me kicking butt at martial arts. He used a different word, but this is a PG podcast. So
It
I'm
is.
gonna, yes, I'm going to amend what he said a little bit. And so he was very delighted with it. And the big thing that actually a lot of people have told me is that they feel more resilient and like better tied together. That's a word
Yeah.
that happens a lot, or that happens a lot in the emails that I get when people reach out from doing it. So if you're interested, oh, and by the way, you can do it with your regular workouts. So it's not like you have to put those to the side. I designed it to be like, we'll say like a NOS booster to your car. You don't have to get a whole new car. You just I think that's how this sort of thing works. You just add the NOS booster somewhere,
Right.
and then bam, now you got like 500 more horsepower or something. That's kind of what the idea is, and it's 9 minutes, so you've got the time. So
You got
9 minute
time.
challenge.com, it is all yours. But that does bring up an interesting point talking about the original strength resets. Well, right out of the gate, you're teaching an original strength in Denver, Mile High
Yeah.
City, on
Yes.
what is it, September 21st?
Yep. September 21st. And it's going to be at actually in Thornton, Colorado, which is just a northern suburb of Denver, um, at a place called Unite Rehab Perform. My friend Dr. Ken is there. He's a physical therapist there, runs a good PT clinic, sports-based PT clinic. They do some performance training there as well. Got a nice open space. So he and I have been talking about me doing a workshop there, and we just decided to stop talking about it and actually put it into place. And so,
Great.
yeah, I think it's going to be like, God, I don't know about you. I can't remember I think maybe the last OS pressing reset west of the Mississippi was, I think I did one in Texas about a year or two ago.
Mm.
But there's just not a ton of OS out here, which I aim to change. And so I'll be having my first OS workshop out here from about 8 in the morning till about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Should be pretty fun, as they always are. No workshop I've ever done is the same as the one I've done before it. I don't know about you.
Same.
Yeah, but I pretty much just get up there and start riffing it, and should be pretty good. I'm really looking forward to it. I think we've already got, what is today, the 3rd of July. I think we've already got like 5 or 6 people signed up for it.
Exciting.
Yeah, so we've got like another week or two of early bird pricing, so people can get a little bit of a discount,
Yeah,
which is always nice. So
absolutely. I'm a little surprised to find out there's not much OS out that way.
you would think. I mean, this is, Colorado, especially out here in the Front Range, where I'm living now, is very active populace. People like to get out, they like to do things. But I believe that once we kind of start planting the seed of OS out here, it's really going to take off because it just fits in so well with what everybody else likes to do in
Yeah.
this part of the world. So
I guess you could say you're living in the wild, wild OS. See what I did there?
oh God, can we hit the pause button on
You
this
know
thing
what? This
already?
is over. This is over.
Yeah, we're done. I gotta go now.
I have a friend actually who lives in Denver. I might have to see. I don't know if he would be interested or not, but he's a rock climber,
Yeah,
and he's had a couple of injuries, and I don't really know what he does to keep fit right now, but I bet he would get a lot out of it. So I'll suggest that he goes to that. Sorry. I'll suggest that he go to that because
appreciate it.
I think he'd get a lot out of it, and you'd get a kick out of him too. He's a good dude.
I like those kinds of people. So yeah, and I enjoy getting all kinds of different people in the workshops, athletes, non-athletes, PTs, chiros, docs, people that are in there just for personal gain. But yeah, I think once we kind of start planting the seed up and down the Front Range here, have a couple workshops. I would also like to see if I could host an OS Pro and get that.
That'd be great.
Which for those that aren't aware, OS Pro is a 2-day workshop where we go really deep into the kind of, I guess, the neurology and the physiology of what's actually taking place with original strength, and what the resets are at a neuro level, and all the different inputs, and then you really get a neat appreciation of how to maximize. At least I did when I first did my first pro. I was like, oh my gosh, I can really open this thing up now.
Yeah.
And the cool thing about it is once you have all of that, all those tools, I think it just allows you to just be super creative. And then I've watched your stuff. I love it. Very creative. It gives you just so many different tools to solve so many different problems. And they're all, the nice thing is they're super simple, super easy to do.
Yeah.
Which is the nice thing. I think I reference my mother every time I talk about original strength, but she'll be, I probably should, it's rude to tell your mom's age, isn't it?
If she's gonna listen to the podcast, then probably don't. But my guess is she's not like a huge Hammercast listener. So fire away. You can always apologize later.
I will. She's a very spry, going to be 83 years old, retired music teacher. And when I first started showing my mom OS, she'd been retired for a few years, and she had reached out to me and said, I'm having a hard time just like getting up off the floor. Because when she was teaching, she taught elementary music education. So she's around first graders all the way up through 5th and 6th graders. She required her to do a lot of dancing and getting up and down off the ground with these kids. And she realized that after a few years of retirement that she kind of lost that ability. And so her goal was to be able to get up off of the ground without using her arms. And so I just gave her the basic resets, nothing very fancy. And within, gosh, I want to say maybe 3 or 4 weeks, maybe 5, I got this video from my mother laying on her back, standing up, without the use of her hands. And before, she had shown me, and she was having a hard time rolling over. She's having a hard time pushing herself up, which was fantastic because my first experience with OS, I sat in a gym and I watched Tim and Jeff Newport, who used to be with the OS, former instructor. And within about 30, 40 minutes of me watching what was going on, I saw the applicability of this to the athletes that I worked with, the police, military people that I worked with, my personal training clients, people that are coming off of like post-rehab or pre-rehab, just applicable to everybody. And, you don't need any equipment per se. All you need is a little bit of time and the instruction. Beautiful, beautiful, super easy system. I can't wait to share it with people out here. I think it's going to be awesome.
Absolutely. I think, one of the things that I like about mentioning the older people side of the equation is that, number one, everybody's got somebody older in their life in most cases, like a parent or relative. And a lot of times they're worried about, what their future is going to be like. I had, I can tell you, my mom, she gained a lot from OS, and she had a lot of she'd undergone throughout her life like 20 different surgeries. I mean, she'd had some really, really, difficult physical issues, but OS was the thing that she could do. And I kind of stumbled upon OS because I was looking for something that I could use to help her. Because previously, if all you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail.
Yeah.
So I tried to apply the kettlebell to help her, but I could see because she had twisted pelvis from, an injury and then the subsequent imbalances that built up. I was like, she's gonna get hurt if I have her do this. I'm not gonna go any further, but I have to figure out what I can do. Stumbled upon OS, started showing her stuff from the original strength system, and I made a tremendous difference. Similarly, I remember I had a gal, Sue, that I trained, and she was like 75, candidate for a double knee replacement surgery, overweight, hated exercise, like just couldn't stand it. But she hated the idea that she might spend the last years of her life wheelchair bound if the surgery got botched. So she took her physical therapist's advice and she was like, okay, I'll start training with Alex. And so I would see her a couple times a week, and then I would give her homework to do. And then I remember it was probably like 7 months later, she went from not being able to walk down the street without serious knee pain to being able to walk 10,000 steps a day for 8 days on vacation in Spain.
Yeah.
And no knee pain the entire time. She didn't become an Olympic sprinter, but she got her life back. And one of the big things too, you talked about getting up off the ground. That's like one of the ultimate indicators. Well, we'll say there's a correlation. We can't say it's a causation sort of thing, but there's a correlation between your ability to get up off the ground hands free and the likelihood of you succumbing to any sort of, physical malady and shuffling off your mortal coil. And I think I remember she was telling me in particular, because one of the things we would do was get up off the ground. And of course, I let her use hand assistance and stuff like that. But she told me when people would she would talk to her friends, similarly, people in their 70s or 80s. Yeah, what do you do for your fitness class? I'm like, oh, we do spinning and we do this other stuff. What do you do? Like, oh, we get up and down off the ground a lot and do all these other things. They're like, well, we never get on the ground. It's like I can't think of a worse thing to do for an older person than not teach them the thing that they absolutely need the most.
Sure. If you fall, how do you, how do you fall, and then how do you get back up?
Exactly.
Or if there's like a pan in a cupboard, just squat down and pick a pan up out of a cupboard. I mean, who wants to go through life having to go look for somebody to go get them, kitchen utensils?
Yeah.
Because it's, when that should just be a normal part of life, just being able to function, moving up. And, I think that's a great story. He said, the woman was like, she was able to go on vacation, experience the world, walk around, be pain-free.
Yeah.
And then also she's probably a little bit more of a pleasant person as well, because, when you're in pain, oftentimes all you do is think about your pain and everything. And, you just become a very unpleasant person. I have personal experience with it.
Sure.
You look like you're going to say something and add to it. Go ahead.
Sue, okay, well, Sue had a great sense of humor. She was actually remarkably, I mean, sometimes she would talk about, she would get frustrated and stuff like
Yeah.
that, but otherwise, she had a pretty like sunny disposition toward a lot of things in life. So she remained pretty upbeat for the most part, but it didn't matter how much better she was doing. At least once every session, she would go, "Have I reminded you lately how much I hate this?" And I'd be like, "Yes, Sue, you have." She said, "And have I told you lately how much I hate you?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, yeah, that sounds familiar." But
Yeah.
no, I agree. I mean, whenever I'm in pain, I know that I'm not as pleasant a person to be around, and I'm sure that it's probably the case for her too. I like I said, I think that her mindset was good enough where it was like she knew how to see the brightness even when things weren't going so well. Some people, I mean, for a lot of people, that's a very difficult thing. But I would say on the whole, yeah, it's difficult to be upbeat when you're just in agony.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just, I not to turn the conversation back onto myself, but just with a personal
Well, that's
experience with,
the reason you're here is actually was for you to turn
well,
it on
actually, yeah.
yourself. So
So
yes,
enough about me, Alex. What do
why
you
don't
think
you
about
talk about me?
me?
Yeah, exactly.
But I had wrecked I had at one point I'd wrecked my hip doing silly nonsense in the gym.
Mm.
Um, and I think I was just doing overly heavy single leg deadlifts. Yeah. And
How
versus
heavy we
just
talking? Just for record, because I've been doing a lot of single leg deadlifts. This makes me wonder how close I am to Snap
to being
City.
stupid.
Yeah.
I want to say we were probably just cold pulling from the floor once we were kind of up there, 185, 205 with the barbell, which
Okay. Yeah,
was
that's a little more than what I'm doing.
it
Not a
looking
ton
back at
more,
it,
but it's more.
yeah, looking back at it, it's just like, okay, it was just kind of, it was cool to do, but in the moment I thought it was the right thing to do. But looking back, I paid a price for it. And I got a little bit of a bite in my hip. Sometimes that happens when you're training and you're like, it's usually just let nature take its course. A couple of days later, it should go away. And it never really did. It was always kind of like lingering, and I'd foam roll on it, or I'd take like one of the massage sticks or a spiky ball, or I'd dig my finger in there, and nothing really seemed to make it better. And then I persisted with my single leg deadlifting and things of that nature, and it just got worse and worse over time. And then it got to the point where it just ached 24/7. Literally, there was no, I couldn't sleep, or if I did sleep, it would be for half an hour, 45 minutes, and then I would wake up, my hip would hurt.
Wow.
There was no comfortable place for me to lay and or sit. I was always playing around with it, and I was in agony, and um, had tried dry needling and tried acupuncture. But pretty much the only thing I didn't do is get on a plane and go to Sedona and you know smoke some dope in a teepee for a little while. I don't think that would have worked either. Um, and then I reached out to Tim Anderson, who pushed me towards, again, we've mentioned before, Jeff Newport, who had the exact same injury, and he had used original strength to get out of it. And here I was, the movement guy, and I was like a little embarrassed that I didn't like use the tools that were right in front of me. But at the end of the day, it was a good learning lesson. But yeah, I sat and spoke with Jeff for quite a while, and kind of gave me the recipe. And my big motivation is I had a teenage son who I wanted to take hiking. Just he and I go up in the mountains, Montana. I was like, oh my gosh, if I can't do this, I can't have my kid, hauling his pack, my pack, and I'm limping up the trail, or I can't go, period.
Yeah.
So I was totally invested. And the things that we did were so incredibly simple. Just a couple simple rules: don't work into pain. We did a lot of diaphragmatic breathing, a lot of like head control, just chin tucks and move my head around. And we just built off of that. It's almost kind of like going almost back to square one, like just this organism that's trying to assimilate as much sensory information as they can about the world, and just build it back up from there. And within a couple of months, I was back good as new. In the meantime, I'd gone to see an orthopedic surgeon about it, and his plan was like, yeah, you've got full thickness cartilage loss, in the acetabulum, signs of arthritis, and your labrum is torn. You're going to need a hip replacement. And at that point, I was like, okay, fine, let's just do it. Let's get it over with. He's like, well, you're too young. We're not going to do it until you get into your 60s. Because, I guess the lifespan of a new hip is about 20, 15, 20 years.
Mhm.
So we don't do this twice. So, all right, well, what are we going to do in between now and then? Because I think I must have been like 40, late 40s, maybe early 50s. That we're going to put you on pain medications. I was like, I don't think that's for me. So that's when I made my phone call to Tim, and I was like, I got to do something about this. I can't go through life this way. So through that pain, through that discomfort, if I wasn't a believer in the system then, I absolutely am now, because now I'm able to do pretty much anything I want to. The pain doesn't come back. I've taken care of it. Everything is basically reset. And I still have the thing, I still have all this stuff. The labrum is torn. I still have the cartilage loss, but there's absolutely no pain whatsoever.
Yeah.
So yeah, super psyched about it. And that's kind of stuff I want to be able to share with the workshop. This September 21st here in Colorado.
Definitely. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting because, sometimes it's a kind of a mixed bag. People who are into fitness, sometimes they're like, oh, I don't see how that could work. It just seems too simple. And then I think sometimes physical therapists, it's the same thing. It's like, well, maybe this, and they're actually educated. So when they say, here's why it couldn't work, they can come up with all the reasons why it couldn't possibly work. But all you have to do is be like, just try it, just do it. And I think it's going to be helpful that you've got Dr. Ken with Johns Hopkins, because if it's just you talking about it, it's not always, they're not always as quick to to receive the information. So I'll be very curious to hear how they implement it, in particular, because I'm sure that a lot of them work with athletes as well as average folks. But the great thing about OS is that literally anybody can use it, because it's designed. It's not even designed at all. It's just organized around your design. So that's the beauty of the system. It's just super simple, super effective. It's like I have yet to meet anybody who has nothing to get out of the OS resets.
Yeah, I'm with you on that too. It's usually the biggest detractors of it are the ones that have never done it.
Yeah.
And if you just put it, park whatever objections you have and just experience it. I can explain it. That's part of my job as an instructor. But actually, there's nothing like firsthand experience for it. And it's like you mentioned Dr. Ken Johnson with Johns Hopkins. He's the direct. I'm going to butcher the title, but he's the director of physical medicine and outpatient rehabilitation. Might be even inpatient, I'm not sure, but I know that's not his official title, but that's just what's coming out of my mouth at the moment.
The big cheese, that's the important part.
He is, yeah. And so there's, what I've been fortunate enough to strike up both a personal and professional relationship with Ken. And he's a big promoter of original strength and the resets. Many of his clinicians use it that I'm in contact with on a regular basis. And we typically will do some type of a pressing reset workshop, or at least some sort of education with his residents at Johns Hopkins, trying to give them as many different types of tools in the toolbox as the common phraseology. So yeah, we're going to be doing something like that, I think, in October. Don't have a date nailed down yet, but I'll be doing a workshop for the Johns Hopkins residents. What would they be? I guess residents, yeah. Either the first weekend of October, or maybe the third one. Original strength is going to play a huge role in that. We're also going to be teaching them some kettlebell skills and kind of taking them from how to use original strength, how to pattern the movements that they're trying to rehabilitate. And it's just simple things like a hip hinge, a squat pattern, things of that nature. And then teaching them how to use a dowel, kind of teach them like what we call like the neutral spine, or at least get it close. And then be able to transition from that. So from pressing reset to patterning the movement, to then being able to pattern the movement, but then also we're going to teach them how to use another tool called a BakBon device, which is sort of like it's again a simple device, easy to use. You kind of just wear it on your back. And I guess you could think of it almost as like a small ski pole or something like that, about maybe 8 inches long, that affixes into like a small, like kind of like a mini backpack on your back, right? And so what it does, it's a proprioceptive cueing device. So it allows you to kind of feel that hip hinge. And then it also shows you like when if you say that you're moving from the spine, like you run out of hip flexion range of motion in your hip, and you start to move from your thoracic spine or your lumbar spine, you won't get the tactile cueing. So the thing sits up and down your spine, or it actually has two of these little devices. You can pull one out of the top, so you can move your head, and then cue the base of the spine, or you can, for some drills, you might want to have the head and the neck be kind of cued. So it gives you a little bit of proprioceptive feedback as to the positioning of the spine, which, there's an unflattering term that we'll use, something like motor morons. They have no idea where they are in time or space.
Yeah.
So for things like that, what this device does is just kind of like original strength. It increases the proprioceptive signal output or intake up into the brain. So they have a feeling of what good movement is supposed to feel like. Then the next step of that is we teach them kettlebell skills to go along with it. You and I think would agree that kettlebell is a very useful tool, pretty user friendly. The learning curve isn't terribly steep, unlike using other implements like barbells and things like that. And it's also a little bit more of a functional tool, for a lot of people. So looking forward to doing that. I think we're also going to tie in a little bit of BFR, blood flow restriction training for them as well.
Oh, nice.
And putting all that together. Yeah, that's another kind of a cool thing we're doing.
I remember a couple of years ago when the blood flow restriction thing came out, I was like, what are we doing here? But I've come to realize
Yeah.
I haven't actually done it myself, but somebody I respect quite a bit, a Hammercast guest, Berge Fagerli, who's a Norwegian hypertrophy expert. Very smart guy. He's basically the innovator of myoreps, which is like a more kind of advanced approach to rest pause training for anybody who knows about bodybuilding. And he talked about using that as a means of like breaking plateaus and also being able to use lighter weights to build more strength. Just one means of doing that without overly relying on excessive volume, which is usually much more difficult to recover from and that sort of a thing. So yeah, I'd definitely be curious to hear more about the blood flow restriction and when you start developing more information on that. If you don't follow him, he's a bright guy. He's very, very smart.
No, I think I'd like to go and glean some info off of that guy. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, he's very. The other thing I have to say that I like about him, this is turning into like the Berge Fagerly love fest here, but we'll move on in just a second. Is he's I mean he earned it. I think is that he's very, very familiar with scientific literature and how to read research and how to glean things from it and what not to glean from it. But he's equally focused on experience, and so he's able to. I think this is one of the issues that I see a lot with the quote unquote science-based fitness community. I've found them to be completely insufferable in most cases. I mean, there are some good exceptions. Again, he would be one of them.
Talking about evidence-based trainers.
What's that?
Are we talking about evidence-based trainers?
Yeah. There are some very good ones. Like Greg Knuckles is really good. But in part it's because I think his approach to it is he knows what he's talking about. There are a lot of other people who do it because I think they treat it as a gimmick. They're like, oh, well, this is what the research says, ergo this is the truth. And it's like, science doesn't really work like that. It's
does not.
No. So yeah, that's one of the things that I think is important is being able to blend the benefits that we now have of the advances in sports science and finding out how we can do certain things to give us an added edge, but then also not discounting experience, because there are a lot of things that won't be studied probably for another couple of decades. Like Charles Poliquin, the late great Charles Poliquin, used to say that the best are already like 20 to 30 years ahead of what the scientific community is studying, because they're doing experiments on themselves and on their people in the gym and things like that. So at any rate, yeah, blood flow restriction is a very interesting concept. Do you use rubber bands for it, or how do you do it? Is it like
no? So the what we use is we get our equipment from a company called Be Strong, and it's a pneumatic cuff.
Oh, okay.
So think of like like how you pump up like a blood pressure cuff. Yeah. And what's kind of unique about these cuffs is that they're chambered. Okay, so like you put it on like about your arm here, and you just pump it up with a little. I always mispronounce it. Sphygmatometer or
Oh yeah, I think I know what you're talking about. I don't know how to pronounce it either, but I know what you're talking about.
So I'm going to get some fun. I'll get teased about it. But anyway, you
Yeah.
pump it up to a certain pressure, right? And the neat thing about this particular product is because it's chambered, you get fairly equal pressure all the way around the arm, whereas a lot of other ones, it's just one bladder.
Mhm.
And I've experimented with a lot of different ones before. We kind of it was Dr. Johnson from Hopkins who showed me the B Strong ones. I think, oh, it's so much better. What you would do with some of these other ones that are just one full bladder is all the air would kind of squeeze out to one side and you'd still be tight, but it wouldn't apply the equal pressure all the way around. So sometimes you'd be getting the inclusion or the restriction. So it's important for people to understand we're not talking about a tourniquet. Okay, there is some blood flow that comes in and out,
Yeah.
but not
Tourniquet is
much.
like stopping blood flow entirely.
It is. Yeah, we don't want to do that. That's not healthy for the tissues. So this allows blood to get in. It just blood has a hard time getting back out. And Dr. Johnson, because he's at Johns Hopkins, has many kind of fun little toys. And so he had basically the equivalent of like an ultrasound machine.
Mm.
And he put this on my arm, and you could sit there and you could take a look at the brachial artery and some of the veins going through there. And you could actually see the blood below the cuff staying in there, but some would kind of squirt through on each little heart rate or each little heartbeat that's doing that. So it's pretty neat. So you can actually see what's going on. So you apply some basically pressure around here, and you don't need a lot of weight, right? And so we took like 5-pound dumbbells, and it is volume based. Could you just take it like your hand and squeeze it and just pump up? You certainly could. The resistance isn't what turns things on. It's not what switches things on. It's the lack of blood coming through in here. So what we have is you have mechanoreceptors, you have chemoreceptors all throughout the whole body. So if we're doing like, you're going to do like about 20 or 30 reps, we're just going to use a bicep curl as an example. And what ends up happening is the metabolites or the waste products and things like that would normally kind of just be flushed out of the system, they accumulate. Right. And so because you're building up a lot of lactate, because you're doing fairly high repetitions, you start to now change the pH level of the blood. Okay. And once we start getting into, we start increasing the acidity of the blood, we have the hydrogen ions floating about in there. This does that. These chemoreceptors in the body go, oh, there's something going on. Let's go and fix this because this isn't normal. There's a couple of little processes that are at work as well, but that's a biggie. And the net effect is it turns on your pituitary gland to secrete human growth hormone.
That makes perfect sense then.
So then what ends up happening, because it's like you kind of hit this alarm state. So if you've ever done like reps to failure, right? You have push-ups to failure or whatever. And then you take a very short break, and then you do it again. You take a very short break and you do it again. That's kind of the methodology you use here. The nice thing is I don't have to have a ton of weight to do it. I can have like just the light weights, because what ends up happening is because I'm not getting oxygenated blood flow back into the muscle, I fatigue a lot faster. So I run through my type 1s, I run through my type 2s really quickly.
Yeah.
I will say it's not for everybody.
Not for the faint of heart, I would imagine.
I've had some people not like it and say, get this off of me right away. But once you kind of get through that, I go through training with these in phases like I normally do. But it is an easy tool for hypertrophy, especially as I'm getting older. I want to hang on to as much muscle mass as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And it's a great way for people to build muscle mass without having to worry about controlling heavy loads or any kind of a load. I could take 2 5-pound dumbbells and just press over my head 30 times. You take a little break, do it again, and just kind of let
heavier though. Like I know you can do it really, really light, but if you were to use like it's like even just like a moderate load, would it have the same effect, or does it have to be light enough where you can get really high reps?
It's got to be light enough so you can get high reps. It's repetition based. I think if I'm scratching my head about the resistance, there's a good book about it called Katsu. The whole concept originated in Japan. I want to say that once you start getting north of about 40-50% of your 1 rep max, that because the load is that heavy, it starts to push blood back up past the cuff.
I see. Okay.
So you start losing the effect. So you don't, I think like 15-20%. I always go light, go for the reps.
Yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily matter how you get the effect. You just need to get the effect. And the effect is localized, but also systemic, because it's not like, so, like if we're doing presses and things of that nature, you're opening up androgen receptors. And there's a ton of androgen receptors up here in the traps, and especially in your quads.
Makes sense why a lot of people on steroids get such huge traps, probably.
Yeah, there's a gigantic proliferation of androgen receptors up here. You also have a bunch in your quads. So they also make cuffs for the quads as well. You put them high up around your thighs, and again, do just 30 body weight squats, or like a 12 kilo kettlebell. It doesn't take much at all. Again, the load's not important. It's the effect that's important.
I just had an idea. You put those on your quads, crawl
Yes.
30
Done it.
paces. Yeah.
Suck
That's
fest.
what I would do. What's that?
It's a suck fest.
Oh, I believe it. Now that's very interesting, and I presume that you can use it for almost any muscle in the body. There might be some where, like, I would imagine the abdomen wouldn't be super easy just because it's
No,
like,
it's
yeah,
not. It's more for peripheral. But you
makes
also
sense.
get, yeah. So you what you tend to do, the protocol for it is you use muscles that are kind of distal to the cuff. So first, so like if I was going to start it out with my arms, for example, I might do like 100 finger flicks or some wrist rollers or something like that up and down. And what I've kind of found out is about 30 reps of anything takes about a minute, give or take.
Okay.
Especially when you got the cuffs on and there's some occlusion, you're starting to fatigue a little bit. Takes around a minute, 45 seconds to a minute. Well, if you've gone back and you've studied your physiology, when you're doing anything at a good intensity level for about 45 seconds or more, that's the point at which your body starts to accumulate more lactate than it can metabolize. So it's that 30 repetitions or so, 20 to 30 reps is about that for most people. So a minute or so of wrist rollers. Do that 3 times. You just stand still because you want the blood to accumulate. Then you take a break, and then you can just kind of work your way up the arm, like that. But I've had good success with it. I do know they use it at Johns Hopkins. One of my friends, fellow colleague, Nicole Clark, who's a physical therapist at Johns Hopkins, uses it all the time with her ACL patients. Because the other thing is that you're also starting to flood, once you take this thing off, you start to flood that particular area with all the things that want to repair tissues. So one of the things, human growth hormone is good for building muscle mass, but it's also good for building all different types of soft tissue, as well as being a good fat metabolism regulator.
Interesting.
So you can use it also for that as well. So I've played around with it. I've done BFR in fasted states, and it's, if you do it on, like anything else, you do it fairly regular. You can get fairly lean, very vascular, and build up some muscle mass at the same time. It's pretty cool stuff.
That's very cool. Very cool indeed. Well, you have a book on loaded resets that's in the works. It's not coming out at any particular date, but is in the works. So tell us about that.
Yeah, so basically loading the resets. If you're familiar with I'm assuming most of your listeners are probably somewhat familiar with original strength.
They better be, and if they're not, folks, listen more often, because
you're gonna get dropped.
Yeah, exactly. Or I'm gonna come to your door, and I'm gonna bring OS. I'm gonna be like a missionary. Like, please let me in. I'll read select passages from Pressing Reset by Tim Anderson.
Awesome. Yeah, so loading the resets is something that we do in the OS Pro course. All right, and the basic idea is adding up the right amount of load to the resets is kind of like taking the volume knob on a stereo and turning it up a little bit. It increases the bandwidth, if you will, of the nervous system's ability for sensory uptake. Makes you a little bit more aware for a lot of different ways. And so we touch on this in OS Pro. And in our OS Pro manual, there's a couple of pages dedicated to it. And then we move on. I'm like, boy, I get a lot of results from my clients really fast by loading the resets. And in some cases, I'll load the resets right away, because it helps people sometimes learn the resets better. Particularly, like in the rolling, a lot of people, when they start out, they roll quite stiffly. They'll roll like a log versus being able to turn and twist the spine. and having a little bit of a load, like by holding a sandbell or something like that on the upper body, and having them kind of focus on turning or pulling with that, takes their mind off of their entire body, and they focus through here and lifting the load, and they're able to perform the resets better. So this whole thing started for me working with a client online whose posture was admittedly terrible. And I had worked with him in person for quite a while. And I was like, John, what do you say I write you up just a little like reset protocol? You know, take you 20, 30 minutes. He does a lot of computer programming. So he's seated quite a bit. And he's like, sure, I'd love to. So I sent it to him, and he's like, you know, I really don't know. I don't really know what this is. Could you just kind of take me through it? So what we started doing is meeting for about a half an hour, three times a week. And I would just write him basic resets. And then I said, do you want to take this up a notch? And as soon as we started loading the resets, like putting some weight on his head, loading his rolls, loading his body when he'd be doing his rocking and things like that, not only did he understand the resets better because he could feel them more, but his posture started to improve rapidly. You know, he almost kind of had like a widow's hump in his thoracic spine, which is virtually gone at this point. He can now move from his hips. He sits up taller. He feels like he's more alert. Like he can operate, you know, mentally. He's writing code all day long. He can operate at a higher level all throughout the day.
Amazing.
It just feels better. And so I was like, damn, maybe what we need to do is we need to kind of like bring a little bit more awareness to this and shine a light on how to load, not only how to load the resets, but give people a program. And so that's what I'm in the process of doing right now, is basically taking that section of OS Pro, and I guess opening it up a little bit more, and basically giving people a how to load the resets and a how to program. I've got about pretty close to 50 of these things written right
different
now.
Programs.
Yeah, different programs.
Wow.
It's just like just a daily little loaded reset. I got about 50 of them written. My goal is to probably come up with about 100 of them. And so that people will have basically and they'll be categorized in my head. That's how this is going to work, like kind of easy, moderately challenging, maybe a little bit more challenging. And then also maybe I'm going to have a section where this is like a loaded reset workout, where that's what you're going to do. So looking forward to that. Again, I'm piecing it together, trying to write a paragraph or two every single day,
Nice.
so I don't forget about it. But I'm kind of psyched about this. I think it's going to be pretty cool. I think a lot of people are going to like it. So when I get the thing written, I want to be back on the Hammercast so I can announce it to them. I want to announce it here, no place else. I want to announce it with you.
What I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. Do you have a name for the book yet, or are you still working on it?
I don't. I'm open to possibilities,
I've got
or
some.
suggestions.
I've got some. I don't think they're gonna work just because they're more than anything they're just funny. Like
Do tell. You do
okay,
know
I'm
I
gonna
enjoy
say
your humor.
Prometheus. You know, the Greek god who brought fire down. Yeah. So it's like you're doing that because you're a master instructor. You're bringing these like advanced techniques down to the people. But I think it's a little too cerebral, and people won't really have an
Did
idea of like.
Prometheus get kicked out for doing that?
Oh yeah, he
Did he get
suffered
in trouble?
greatly. That's the other reason I don't think it would be great, because it's like
Yeah,
it's not exactly analogous to what you're doing. People are going to
great
appreciate.
title.
Yeah.
I'm
And you know,
gonna
and
get booted out.
yeah, and Tim and the rest of the the higher ups, they certainly want you to actually put this stuff out. So again, it's similarly, it's
Yeah,
not like they're trying, like you're not taking it, from like the chosen few who know it and then
no.
distributing it. It's like, yeah, they'll be very happy that you're putting this out. But anyway, that thought had come to mind because I thought, I like a good play on words, and whenever
You
I can,
do.
yeah,
And
whenever I can,
look, that's the only reason I subscribe to your email list. I don't.
good.
I just want to read them. I get it. It's like my daily chuckle.
That's
I
what I
think
love
it's
to hear. I've got there's a good one coming out tomorrow. I can't tell you what it is because it'll ruin the surprise, but you'll dig it. But I think you could say that about most of them. I try to be. It's not always like a play on words, but I try to keep it at least entertaining. I think mistake that a lot of people make when writing emails for a mass audience is they treat it like is this some sort of like a somber, like solemn duty. It's like people want to have a good time and they want to
yeah.
enjoy and learn. So, lighten up. You're not going to care. You're not curing cancer here. Right. So this is
No.
like, yeah,
Yeah,
lighten up a little
we're
bit.
not at all. We're just exercising.
Yeah.
And all we're doing with this is we're trying to get people to feel good while they're taking care of themselves.
Absolutely.
That's all.
And
And there's just ways to do it.
absolutely. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, at any rate, uh, if I come up with a good name for you, I'll let you know. But Prometheus, I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna hang on to that, let that ruminate, circle the airport a little bit before it lands.
yes, maybe it won't land. Maybe you're going to be like, oh, we're going to have to divert you to a different airport. Go away. You never know. You got another
Yeah.
ebook that you're working on with the aforementioned Pierce Kwan on the topic
Yes.
of pickleball.
Yeah.
First of all, explain this because a lot of people don't know what pickleball is. I'll give you my own background with it. I used to be a part of a local Italian speakers club, and the guy who was he was an older guy, he was in his 60s, who was the organizer. He was always talking about like his the fitness that he really liked. He would play pickleball.
Right.
And I mean, so he was the first person I ever heard of him, and I mean, there's not even a name in Italian for it. You would just have to say pickleball. But I remember thinking, all right, I keep hearing about this over and over again, and then some of my own friends were like talking about playing pickleball, and they just love it. It's like, you know, they're they're all over it. My friends are in their 30s. This guy's in his 60s, so it's like there's a wide array of people who are really enjoying the sport, and it seems to be it's like the fastest growing sport in America
Yeah.
at the moment, and it's of course it's also very popular in Australia, where Pierce is
Mhm.
an amateur. I think he's amateur, right? Pro would be like you're
I think
getting.
he's working towards his, I think he's working towards maybe trying some, getting into some tournaments where there's some prize money.
Yeah, 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 and I think at that point it
He's,
would be a pro,
yeah.
right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, he's
But I
quite good. I think he's like top four, top five, or he's at least top 10
he's up
in
there.
his age category. Yeah, he's up there. He's quite accomplished.
Yeah. So you and he are writing an ebook on the topic, and I'm
Yeah.
curious about how that is. First of all, like what the main focus is. Is it like kettlebells and OS for pickleball, or
It's going to be written for I'll say beginners. See, and I'm gleaning a lot from Pierce. He said, like, look, Mark, because I want to write like a big, heavy fitness thing, because that's my thing. That's my game. That's what I really enjoy. Um, and then I just kind of take the fitness lens and I just kind of shine it into a certain arena. He's like, look, most people that play pickleball got into pickleball because they really like playing pickleball. They didn't get into pickleball because they want to exercise a ton. They're using pickleball to exercise.
yeah,
The problem with that is that they're jumping into something that their bodies might not be ready for. It's all like runners. I'm going to go get in shape. Okay, let's go run a couple of miles. Well, your body may not be ready to take abuse. All right, so the parallel is there. So what Pierce was probably seeing is that people are getting a little bit hurt, they're getting a little bit injured from it. So we're coming at it from that angle, but then also just giving people a basic daily strength and conditioning program. Original strength is a part of it, not the focus of it, but it's a part of it, because I just think that that's just a basic. That should just be kind of a basic neural primer for most people. But it's more or less we're going to have them give very simple little workout plans. Nothing, these aren't going to be like 2 hour long things. We're looking at trying to keep it a half hour, 45 minutes, because most people that play pickleball want to get out in the court and play pickleball. They don't want to spend 2 hours in the gym, because that 2 hours could be spent playing pickleball.
yeah,
So we're kind of trying to write the book with that in mind. So it's not going to be a super hardcore, pickleball workout. In the future, we have discussed about, once we get the initial book written and everything formatted properly, maybe one for kind of the people that want to kind of take it up a notch.
yeah.
So yeah, that's in the works as well. He and I are both collaborating on it. I know he's coming off the tail end of his season.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a little bit more bandwidth for it. So we're going to kind of jump back into that and get that. That'll be pretty cool.
It's very exciting indeed. Well, where can people follow you online if they want to be the first to know? I mean, they're going to be the first to know about the book on the Hammercast, obviously. Yep. So
yes.
They know exactly where to go for that. But if they want to follow you for OS related things and all the other stuff that you're working on, BakBon, the blood flow restriction, where would be a good place to do that?
Probably the best place is to go to my Instagram page, which is Shropshire ST, which is it looks like Shropshire est, which I'm kind of proud of now.
Yeah.
Because I'm the Shropiest of the Shrops. So
yes.
Yes, this is the Shrop. It's Shropshire ST, which ST is for sports training. So that was the name of my business. So that's where that came from. I post most of my stuff there. Facebook, not so much. but I'd say mainly there as well. I don't lurk on Twitter, or sorry, X. We don't call it Twitter any
I
longer.
call it Twitter. I'm never gonna call it X, man. It's
You
Twitter.
fight the power.
I'm a yeah, I'm gonna fight the power. Actually, I X is definitely X, Twitter, whatever you want to call it, is definitely I think the most chaotic of all the platforms. Every time I go on there, it's just like, I mean, I think regardless of what other people think, I think Elon did a good job with, with opening it up so people can actually say what they really think.
Yeah,
But at the same time, it's also like, I mean, like posting anything on there is like just shouting into a gale force wind. It's like, it, I'll post stuff or I'll repost. It's very rare because I'm not on there very often, but it's
right.
like nobody sees it. Nobody. You have to be kind of a celebrity,
Yeah,
and have like driven people to your Instagram or had other people I'm sorry, Twitter, in
right.
order to get anybody to follow you there. So Instagram, I think, is still seems like it gets some good traction.
Yeah, that's right. I get most of my, like you said, most of my traction is through there. So I'd say go to that, or my webpage, which is my name, markshropshire.com.
Nice.
I'm not as active on that as well. That's more of a repository for blog articles, to direct people towards online training if that's something they want to do, or if they just want to reach out, just say, tell me what a great guy I am and how brilliant I am with original strength and all things training. They can do that as well.
Yes, they can reach out and be like, dude, I saw you in that Techno Viking video all those years ago, and man, I can't believe I tracked you down finally. What are you doing in Colorado? So anyhow, if you don't know what I'm talking about with Techno Viking, you have to look it
Go
up.
look it up.
It's like one of the early viral videos, and it's just hysterical. Like especially because you watch it, you don't know any German, you don't know what's going on, and then
Don't
it's
have
just
to.
like you don't even yeah, you really don't have to because it's like there's actually very little. You all you need to know is it happens in Germany, and then you watch it, and well, you've seen it. I don't know, but to the
Yeah,
listeners anyway who don't know what I'm talking about, just go watch Techno Viking, and I think you'll understand why it became such a hit. It's like unintentionally funny,
it
uh,
is.
barely a word spoken. I mean, there are, but you don't hear them, and it's just I'm not gonna ruin it for you, but you got to watch it.
Yeah.
And at any
There's
rate, Mark Shropshire very vaguely looks like the Techno Viking,
vaguely, yes, quite
minus
vague.
the ponytail.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot of ponytail going on here anymore.
No, no, no.
Never was.
You've definitely become more corporate since your
Fair
Viking days. So,
enough.
Mark, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
And folks, as always, have fun and happy training.